By 1943, the war in the skies over Europe had changed a lot. The Allies were clearly winning, and their bombs were destroying Germany. The Luftwaffe, which used to rule the skies, was now on the defensive. German engineers were told to create the fighter plane of the future. And the answer was the jet engine. This technology promised speeds that propeller planes could only dream of. Now, the Me 262 project was no longer just a scientific curiosity, but something Germany really needed for its strategy. It was the only way Germany could hope to get back control of the air. The Me 262 had a super new design. Two Jumo 004 turbojet engines under its wings let it fly up to 540 miles per hour. No propeller plane at that time could go that fast. Its sleek, swept-back wings made it very stable at high speeds. Inside the cockpit, it had the newest gadgets and sights. And for weapons, it had 4 30mm cannons that could even take down big bombers. But such a complex machine needed new ways to build and fix it, and pilots needed special training. The new Me 262 became a symbol of a big step forward in technology, but also brought new problems for German aviation. Hitler's feelings about military tech were pretty mixed up. He loved wonder weapons, and thought they were the key to winning, but he often didn't get how powerful they really were. When they showed him the new Messerschmitt, he didn't see how amazing jet engines were. It was only when the war started going badly that he saw it as a weapon to get back at their enemies. Hitler insisted on turning the new plane into a bomber, even though the engineers and pilots disagreed. This choice slowed down the making of the world's first jet fighter and cost Germany its advantage in the sky. At the heart of the first jet fighter project was Professor Willy Messerschmitt, a giant in German aviation, and the creator of the famous Bf 109. He wasn't just an engineer, he was an artist obsessed with the idea of a jet fighter. For him, it wasn't just a military order, it was the next big step in aviation. A key decision, placing the engines in pods under the wing, was a huge engineering breakthrough. His vision and stubbornness really shaped the project, even with all the pressure from officials and red tape. Messerschmitt personally oversaw the use of the newest technologies: a thin, smooth wing design, a sealed cockpit, and a landing gear with a nose wheel. All of these things made the Me 262 special for its time. Special attention was given to the Jumo 004 engines, the first mass-produced jet engines, which allowed the Me 262 to fly at speeds over 850 kilometers per hour. Thanks to these technical choices, the plane was much better than any propeller-driven fighter of its time. You could feel Messerschmitt's touch in every part of the design, his drive for speed, agility, and being the best in technology. Erhard Milch was the iron fist of the German aviation industry. As the state secretary of the Ministry of Aviation, he focused on mass-producing models that were already proven. He was also skeptical about Messerschmitt's jet program and tried to slow down its development as much as possible. But when the war changed, Milch changed his mind and became the main supporter of the Me 262. Now, he was doing everything he could to speed up production and coordinate resources, trying to make up for lost time. It's fair to say that without his important help, the first production jet fighter might never have been made. Deep in Bavaria, at the Messerschmitt factory in Augsburg, engineers were working under a lot of pressure to create a groundbreaking machine. Everything was top secret, and making it needed new ways of doing things and a lot of precision. After the Allied attacks, the project moved to hidden underground spots like the one near Oberammergau in the Alps. Spreading things out saved the project, but it also caused new problems, delays, and issues with how good things were. Even with all the difficulties, the engineers came up with new ideas: light metal materials, a special landing gear design, and putting jet engines into the plane. Every part had to be perfect. Even a tiny mistake could cause a disaster during testing. In the underground workshops, they had to come up with new ways to put things together, and check their quality to meet the high demands of jet planes. They paid extra attention to cooling the engines and how the plane moved through the air. The official technical requirements for the plane were given out by the Reich Air Ministry, or RLM, on January 15, 1939. This was a truly ambitious and even daring request for its time. It called for a single-seat fighter, powered by 2 new jet engines which were being developed by BMW and Junkers at the time. The main requirement was speed. The RLM demanded a top speed of at least 900 kilometers per hour or 560 miles per hour. This was a number absolutely impossible for any propeller plane of that era. They needed a jump of more than 100 miles per hour compared to the fastest fighters at the time. The mandate also laid out other key details. The plane needed to have at least 1 hour of flight time to intercept enemy formations, engage in combat, and return to base. Its service ceiling needed to allow it to confidently attack high-altitude bombers. This clearly pointed to its role as an interceptor. Most importantly, the requirement called for powerful weapons. The plane was to be armed with 3 20mm MG-151 cannons. Such heavy armament was considered necessary to quickly and reliably destroy heavy multi-engine bombers, which were expected to be the main threat in the coming war. This initial technical mandate set the fundamental path for the Messerschmitt team. The plane was designed not as a general-purpose platform, but as a specialized high-speed interceptor. Every major design choice Voigt and Messerschmitt made in the early stages was a direct response to these requirements. The narrow, sleek fuselage was designed to minimize drag and maximize speed. The two engines provided the necessary thrust to achieve the required speed and offered some reliability, which was critically important given the completely new and still unreliable engine technology. The entire design was built around the Holy Trinity: speed, altitude, and firepower. Interestingly, the initial RLM requirement said nothing about two features that would later become the new fighter's signature: swept wings and tricycle landing gear. The first designs created to meet this requirement had a regular straight wing and traditional tail dragger landing gear. These more advanced solutions came later. They were clever engineering answers to unexpected problems found during testing. This clearly shows that the initial requirement set the goal, but the final revolutionary shape of the Me 262 was forged through trials and errors. Even in the early design stages, special attention was paid to cockpit ergonomics and instrument placement. The pilot needed to quickly orient themselves in the complex environment of high-speed aerial combat. Engineers faced the challenge of developing a new fuel system capable of ensuring a steady fuel supply to the jet engines during sharp maneuvers and high G-forces. An equally complex task was creating a reliable hydraulic system for controlling the landing gear and flaps, which was critically important for safe, high-speed takeoffs and landings. Aerodynamic tests in the wind tunnel allowed dangerous phenomena like flutter and flow separation to be identified and fixed, which was another step towards achieving the required performance. As a result, the design of the landing gear and structural elements was strengthened to withstand the forces encountered when landing a heavy jet fighter. All of this together made the Me 262 not just a technological breakthrough, but also a real test for German engineering, forcing them to find solutions for problems no one had ever faced before. The journey from blueprint to first flight was long and risky. The first prototypes flew with the Junkers Jumo piston engine, because the BMW 003 jet engines were unreliable. It was only with the third prototype and the Jumo 004 engines that a pure jet flight was possible. These engines could produce up to 900 kilograms of thrust, allowing the Me 262 to reach speeds over 850 kilometers per hour, something piston-powered planes of that time couldn't do. However, the Jumo 004S were complex in design and had a short lifespan, only 25 to 50 hours of operation. On July 18, 1942, Fritz Wendel took the new Messerschmitt into the sky. That's when the jet age truly began. The new plane had swept wings and a unique aerodynamic design, which gave it great maneuverability and stability at high speeds. The Me 262 became a symbol of technical advancement, even with all the difficulties and compromises in its design. The biggest engineering problem was the engines. The Junkers Jumo 004 turbojet was a marvel of technology, but it was also the plane's weak point. Germany didn't have enough heat-resistant metals, so engineers had to use steel alloys that weren't as good. The turbine blades often bent out of shape and broke down. The engine needed fixing after only 10 to 12 hours of flying. The axial design was good, but it was also complex and easily affected by how well it was made. The engine had an 8-stage axial compressor and a single-stage turbine, which meant it could compress air really well and was compact, but the temperature coming out of the combustion chamber got super hot, which wore out parts really fast. When starting up or changing speed quickly, the engine was really likely to break down, and the inconsistent build quality made the problem even worse. Early Me prototypes had trouble staying stable at high speeds. Their straight wings caused shaking and made them hard to control. The fix came by accident. To balance the heavy engines and landing gear, the wings were swept back. This not only helped with balance but also delayed shockwaves, making the Me-262 the first successful jet fighter with swept wings. But the landing gear was still an issue. The nose wheel often broke on rough airfields. Engineers tried to make the landing gear stronger, but because of limited space and weight, they had to make some compromises. The landing gear itself was unusual for its time, with a nose wheel that gave the pilot a better view, but made the plane fragile when landing. Also, the swept wing needed a special way to balance and control it, which made it harder to fly at slow speeds. The Me's combat range was just over 620 miles, with a flight time of up to 90 minutes. It was a sprinter, delivering quick strikes, but had limited range. Even though it was small, the plane weighed almost 7 tons when fully loaded. Its shape helped it go up fast, but taking off and landing was tricky because it was so quick. The thin wings made it easy to turn at high speeds, but also made it easy to damage. It couldn't fly for very long because of how much fuel it carried, and fixing the engines was hard, needing skilled mechanics. All these things made the Me-262 one of a kind, but it was tough on the pilot and the ground crew. The main job of the Me-262 was to destroy heavy bombers. Its weapons were made for one single brutal purpose. The standard fighter version, the A-1A, had a super powerful setup of 4 30mm Mk-108 cannons placed right in the nose. These were slow-firing, short-barreled guns that shot heavy explosive shells. They weren't meant for fancy dogfights, they were like aerial shotguns able to tear huge chunks out of enemy planes. The explosive power of just one 30mm shell was often enough to disable a fighter or rip a wing off a 4-engine bomber like the B-17, known as the Flying Fortress. A short 1-second burst from all 4 cannons would send a terrifying stream of metal and explosives towards the target. The Mk-108 was simple, using recoil to fire, which made it easier to build. But the shell's slow initial speed, about 540 meters per second, meant they flew in a noticeable arc. This made it really hard to shoot accurately from far away. German pilots had to get dangerously close to the bombers, often flying through a hail of .50 caliber machine gun fire just to make sure their shots hit. The guns also often jammed, and this problem got worse with vibrations at high speeds. Still, when everything worked, the 4 Mk-108S gave it a firepower that no other fighter in the war could match. It was a real hammer for the toughest targets. To protect the pilot during these risky attacks, the plane had a small but smart amount of armor. The cockpit had 90mm armored glass which could stop bullets coming head-on. The pilot's seat back was protected by a 15mm armor plate. Extra armor was placed around the ammo storage and near important control systems. Of course, this wasn't enough to make the plane totally safe, but this level of protection gave a real chance of surviving fire from bomber gunners and escort fighters, meaning they could make it back to base. Later versions experimented with even more powerful and unusual weapons. The Me-262A1A/U4 was a special version with a huge 50mm BK-5 cannon, basically an anti-tank gun on a fighter plane. Other versions could carry 24 unguided R-4M Orkan rockets under their wings. These rockets were fired in a big group and could hit an entire bomber formation from outside the range of their defensive fire. One hit from such a rocket was usually deadly for a bomber. All of this showed a clear understanding of the mission. They needed to deliver a crushing blow to tough targets from a safe distance. Technically, the Me-262 had a modern RV-16B gun sight, which helped the pilot aim more accurately even at high approach speeds. However, despite this, the gun's ballistics demanded high skill from the pilot and quick judgment of distance. Each gun only had 80 rounds of ammo, which limited how long they could fire and required accuracy during attacks. Reloading and maintaining the weapons were also tough because of how tightly packed the nose section was. The plane's armor was carefully built into its design so it wouldn't add too much weight. German engineers tried to find a good balance between protection and flight performance, which was super important for a jet fighter. All of this made the Me-262 not just a scary enemy, but also a technically complex machine that demanded top focus and skill from its crew in battle. This fighter plane was all about extremes. Its amazing speed and powerful weapons made it a real threat to bombers. The pilot could pick the perfect moment to attack, using the plane's speed advantage. But getting into a dogfight was super dangerous because it was hard to control at high speeds. It could climb really fast, which helped it get into good positions quickly. But only a skilled pilot could really use that to their advantage. Its biggest weak spot was taking off and landing. It was slow to get going, the engines took a long time to warm up, and the landing gear was flimsy. During these times, the new plane was an easy target for the Allies. They quickly learned to ambush it near airfields. Plus, it often broke down and there wasn't enough fuel, which made things even worse. Every flight was a balancing act between being almost unbeatable in the air and constantly risking a crash on the ground. The Me-262 was a plane way ahead of its time, but it was doomed to fail because of its weaknesses. The story of this project shows how a brilliant idea can be ruined by small details. At the heart of the fighter was the Jumo 004 jet engine. It was the world's first jet engine made in large numbers, but it usually only lasted about 25 hours. Controlling the engine's power needed super precise movements. A sudden push of the throttle could make the engine stop or even catch fire. The landing gear was designed to be super light, which made it easy to damage during rough landings or on bumpy runways. Its weapons, 4 Mk108 cannons, could deliver a devastating punch. But the pilot had to be super accurate with distance because of how fast they fired and how the bullets flew. The limited fuel meant each mission only lasted about 30 minutes, making every flight a race against time. All these technical things meant that this new plane needed not just bravery, but also a lot of knowledge to survive and win. It was the summer of 1944. The first combat flights of the new plane were careful, almost like experiments. Lieutenant Alfred Schreiber shot down a British Mosquito, a plane that had been untouchable for propeller fighters before. This was the signal. The age of jet combat had begun. Pilots quickly figured out that dogfighting wasn't possible. The key was speed and surprise. The tactic was hit and run, a short burst from the cannons, then a quick exit from the fight. The Allies were shocked. Ghost planes appeared in the sky, disappearing before anyone could react. The first big unit, Commando Nowotny, had amazing victories, but it suffered from crashes and technical problems. The death of ace pilot Nowotny became a symbol. The new fighter could be deadly in the air, but on the ground, it was vulnerable and unreliable. The dream of an unbeatable weapon crashed into the harsh reality of using it. The jet revolution had started, but the cost was too high. Maintaining a jet plane needed highly skilled people and rare materials, which became harder and harder to find during the war. Even with its technical edge, operating the new fighter was a real challenge. The main goal of the Me-262 was to stop the waves of Allied bombers. The Germans created the first jet fighter wing, JG-7. Their tactic was to attack head-on at super high speeds, fire a quick burst, and then get out of the fight right away. Sometimes, a small group of these new planes could shoot down a dozen bombers in just one mission. For the Americans, this was a whole new level of scary. These jet fighters were faster and more deadly than anything they had ever seen. But there were very few of these planes, only about 100 compared to thousands of Allied aircraft. They lost a lot of planes because of accidents and attacks on their airfields. Their success in battle didn't change the overall war. For every bomber they shot down, they often lost a fighter and a pilot. This project was like trying to use a tiny scalpel to save someone who was already dying. It was an amazing weapon, but it was too little, too late. This new plane showed how far technology could go, but it never reached its full potential because the technology wasn't perfect yet, and the war situation was so bad. This fighter plane changed air combat forever. Speed and energy became more important than being able to turn quickly. The Allies had to learn how to intercept jet planes, not just chase them. After the war, this new plane became a prize for engineers all over the world. Its swept wings and engine pods became the standard for new generations of fighter planes. The American F-86 Sabre and the Soviet MiG-15 were direct descendants of the ideas from this project. The Germans were ahead of their time with the axial engine, the ejection seat, and the first guided missiles. This new plane wasn't just a machine, it was a system that shaped the future of aviation. Even though it lost the war, this fighter plane became a spark for the whole world. Its new fuel system allowed it to fly fast and far, even though jet engines used a lot of fuel. Many of the technical ideas from this fighter plane are still used in modern fighter jets today, proving it was a true breakthrough in aviation. After the war, the Me-262 lived on in Czechoslovakia, the USSR, the USA, and France. Its technology became the base for new projects. This fighter was like the first patient of the jet age, from which dozens of planes grew. As a weapon of war, it was a failure. Too late, too few, too unreliable. As an engineering success, it was a huge win, way ahead of its time by 10 years. The project couldn't change the war's outcome, but it changed how air battles were fought. In our next episodes, we'll talk more about the technical side of this project, the fighters and bombers from Germany and the Allied side, and also about the famous operations and people from that time. Please give this video a like, subscribe to the channel, and hit the bell to get notifications for new episodes. Also, write in the comments what or who you'd like to see an episode about on our channel. Your opinion and helpful feedback are very important to us. See you soon in our next breakdown, friends. Bye!